Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of The Space Between. My name is Zach Eichholz and I'll be your host for today. Today we're at the National Weather Service and we're joined by...
Will Ulrich. I am the warning coordination meteorologist here at the National Weather Service office in Melbourne.
Thank you for taking the time today, Will. We really appreciate it.
Happy to be here and happy to have you here.
Cool. So first question, what does the National Weather Service do and what area does the Melbourne office look after?
That's a good question. National Weather Service is the overseer of all things weather for the United States. It is our responsibility to issue forecasts out as far as 7 days, as well as watch warnings and advisories. That's our primary mission, to issue tornado warnings, severe thunderstorm warnings, hurricane warnings, things like that, all originate from your local National Weather Service office. And here at the Melbourne office, we forecast the weather for 10 counties in east central Florida. And that, of course, includes Brevard County, but we stretch all the way up to Daytona Beach, down to Martin County, which is just north of West Palm Beach, inland to Okeechobee, Osceola, and Lake County.
Okay.
So we have a pretty big area of responsibility here in what we call East Central Florida.
Very cool. Yeah, that is a big area. So what are the predictions for the 2024 Atlantic hurricane season? Is it looking active?
Yeah, so all signs this year are pointing to a busy Atlantic hurricane season. And there are a number of factors that go into the forecast, right? It is just that, a forecast. So we don't know exactly how things are going to evolve this hurricane season, but the fact is we have two primary drivers behind what is anticipated to be a busy hurricane season. First is La Nina, which is water temperatures in the eastern Pacific Ocean. They are cooler than normal near the equator, and that generally leads to less hurricane activity in the eastern Pacific Ocean. But Mother Nature has a way of balancing herself out. So if you have less storms in the eastern Pacific Ocean, that tends to favor additional activity in the Caribbean, Gulf of Mexico, and the Atlantic Ocean. So La Nina is one part of it, but it's also how warm the water temperatures are in the Atlantic. And this season, we're seeing very warm water temperatures in an area known as the Main Development Region, which is the vast majority of where we see tropical cyclones form. The Main Development Region is several months ahead of schedule. In other words, the water temperatures are very warm. So unfortunately, that looks to aid in the development of tropical cyclones this year. And the forecast from the National Hurricane Center and the Climate Prediction Center is calling for an above normal season with up to 17 to 25 named storms. It is the highest number of storms that they've ever forecast since they've been doing it about 20 to 30 years ago.
Wow. So be prepared.
Be prepared this year more than ever. But as I tell people, it doesn't matter whether we forecast an above normal season or a below normal season. It only takes one, so it is best to be prepared each June 1st of every single year.
Okay. Good advice. So let's go kind of through a quick round of myth busting, some common things that people associate with hurricanes that may be true or not true.
All right.
Does Brevard County have some type of mythical hurricane shield protecting it? Because the Kennedy Space Center is here, and some people think it was built here because there is some shield or some form of nature that stops hurricanes. Is that true?
No. And
No.
I've heard this myth and misconception be spread throughout the county all the time. The fact is, one of the main reasons why they put Kennedy Space Center there is because it juts out into the Atlantic Ocean, so it allows the rockets to launch out over the open water safely away from humans. But we looked back at the data going all the way back to 1850 in the recorded database of hurricanes, and there have been upwards of 30 to 40 hurricanes that have passed within 50 miles of Cape Canaveral. Now, why do I say within 50 miles? Hurricanes are not single points.
Right.
Remember, they can have impacts and extend hundreds of miles from the center. So just because you don't have a system move directly over your community doesn't mean you're not going to be impacted. So within 50 miles of Cape Canaveral, we've seen around 30 to 40 hurricanes going back in the records all the way to 1850. So it is absolutely false that there is some type of protective shield over Brevard County because we have plenty of instances of hurricanes that have impacted Brevard County. You can go back, of course, to the 2017 season with Hurricane Irma, 2016 Hurricane Matthew, Wilma back in 2005, Charlie back in 2004, all the way back into the 1970s, which I know we're getting back in time a little bit, but Hurricane David was a Category 1, Category 2 hurricane that came up the east coast of Florida. So there are plenty instances of hurricanes that have impacted our community.
So, true, false, duct tape on windows is an effective method of protection.
The best method that you can use for windows in your home, of course, are storm shutters or plywood. Putting something on the window like duct tape is actually a bad thing, because the fact is, if something were to break that window, the duct tape is now going to hold that glass together, and you're going to have larger shards of glass that maybe become projectiles in the wind. So duct tape is not an effective method to protect you and your family. The best thing that you can have, of course, are plywood or storm shutters on the exterior of those windows. Do not put tape on your windows.
Okay. True, false? It's only a Category 1 hurricane. I don't need to worry about it.
I've heard this a lot. It's only a tropical depression. It's only a tropical storm. We have to get away from focusing on the winds of a hurricane, which of course are an important piece of the puzzle, but understand there are four primary hazards associated with a tropical cyclone: wind, freshwater rainfall flooding, storm surge, and tornadoes. And every system is different and has a different combination of those four hazards. So the fact is, wind is just one part of the overall hazard of a system. And a Category 1 hurricane would bring very substantial winds to our community, but that may be downplaying the threat of storm surge along our coastline or the threat of freshwater rainfall flooding. So let's get away from worrying about what category a system is and look at the system from a holistic approach. What type of impacts are local, right? What type of impacts are expected in our community? And you have to look at the four primary hazards associated with a tropical cyclone, and that'll vary from storm to storm.
Okay. True, false? The causeways close before and during storms.
Now, the folks who decide that ultimately, lie within Brevard County Emergency Management, local police department, but it is Brevard County's rule of thumb to not close the causeways before and during a storm, because you want to give people the opportunity to ingress and egress, primarily egress off of the barrier islands, right? We're not going to block people from leaving the barrier islands. So that, again, is one of those myths and misconceptions that Brevard County tries hard to kind of put the kibosh on. The fact is, they will not block you from leaving the barrier islands, but what they will do after a storm is shut down the barrier or the causeways for a time so that they can inspect them to ensure that there is no damage at the base or along the bridge itself. So it is possible that after a storm goes by, Florida Department of Transportation or Emergency Management will do a quick survey to ensure that that bridge is still safe.
Okay. True, false? It is safe to drive through flooded roadways.
Of course not, because a lot of the times it's very difficult to discern how deep that water is. So the adage goes for us here at the National Weather Service: turn around, don't drown. Don't put you and your family's lives at risk by not knowing how deep the flooded roadway that you see ahead of you. Don't take the chance. It's not worth it.
True, false? Lightning never strikes the same place twice.
The probability of being struck by lightning is very low, but the fact is there's nothing stopping Mother Nature from striking the same location or the same place or, God forbid, the same person twice. So it is possible. Obviously, the odds get lesser and less, but the fact is there are plenty of instances, especially tall buildings, that have been struck countless times, far more than just 2 or 3 times. We're talking tens to hundreds of times. So the fact is, locations can be struck by lightning more than once, but the fact is the probability of each successive time does get a little bit less.
Okay. Is the old saying, red sky at night, sailors delight, red sky in the morning, sailors take warning, true?
I've heard this adage along with lots of other proverbs in the past, and what I'll tell you is that while it may work in some circumstances, it may not work in other circumstances. So don't rely on these old adages to keep you and maybe your family safe. Now, this is an old mariner saying that originates all the way back to Shakespearean days, but I can tell you that that type of proverb worked in a different part of the world where storm systems come from the west to the east. Down here in Florida during the summer months, our storm systems actually come at us from the Atlantic Ocean. So the saying would actually be opposite during the summer months here in Florida. So while it might work in one part of the world, it may not work elsewhere.
Okay, so Proverbs not so much, maybe just National Weather Service.
Stick to weather.gov.
Okay.
That's a good idea.
True, false? On the edge of or someone's on the edge of the forecast cone for a hurricane, or completely out of the cone, so they must be safe.
This is a difficult one that we are faced with every single time there's a storm that threatens Brevard County or Florida as a whole, because it's important to remember that hurricanes are not single points. And the cone graphic that the National Hurricane Center issues is designed to tell you where the center of the system is expected to go over the next 3 and 5 days. Again, let me say that again. The cone that the National Hurricane Center puts out is designed to tell you where the center of the system is expected to go over the next 3 to 5 days. But as I said earlier, hurricanes are not single points. hurricanes have far-reaching impacts that can extend out 100, 200, sometimes even 300 miles. So the problem that some people use with the cone is exactly what you just said. Oh, I'm outside of the cone, I'm safe. That's not the case at all. It is only designed to tell you where the center of the system is expected to go. So focus on the impacts, and you can get that information from our website in advance of a hurricane, especially when you get within about 3 days. We can start talking in more specifics, start providing you estimated wind speeds, how much rain may fall, what the threat of tornadoes or storm surge is. As we get closer to an event, we can speak in more specifics to the threats at hand in your community. So it is absolutely not true that if you find yourself outside of a cone that you're safe. Understand that it is just designed to tell you where the center of the system is expected to go. But hurricanes are not single points.
Okay. And then last one, true, false, hurricanes only impact coastal areas, and inland areas don't need to be concerned.
It goes back to the thing we just spoke about a few minutes ago, right? Hurricanes come with 4 primary hazards: wind, freshwater flooding, storm surge, and tornadoes. And it is freshwater flooding, wind, and tornadoes that can have far-reaching impacts even away from the coastline. Now, it is true that the biggest threat to life and property does come in the form of storm surge, and that's that abnormal rise in water due to the winds and pressure of a hurricane, but that's just along the immediate coastal front. That doesn't take into account all of the other hazards that I was talking about, and so even people who live away from the coast need to be prepared every hurricane season.
Okay. And then just real quick, can you explain where we are right now?
Sure.
What is going on behind us?
A lot of activity today, right? And despite the fact that the weather's pretty quiet according to satellite imagery right now, you're on the operations floor of the National Weather Service Melbourne office, and at any given time you will always see 2 meteorologists, a minimum of 2 meteorologists on the operations floor. We are open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and we have up to 8 of these workstations that you see behind us that allow our forecasters to observe and collect weather information and then forecast information. The first, #1 priority that we do here is issue hazardous watches and advisories and warnings. That is our #1 priority here. And so using these advanced weather information processing systems, or AWIPS machines, of which we have 8 on the operations floor, we can spin up and spin down during big events like hurricanes or big severe weather events. So at sometimes you may see up to 7 or 8 meteorologists on the operations floor, but this is kind of the lifeblood of everything that we do at the National Weather Service. Our forecasting team of 20 to 25 forecasters work in this building here on the north side of the Melbourne International Airport, and this is where all of the weather information that you get on your cell phones, whether it's wireless emergency alert or through your favorite weather app, the vast majority of the weather information that you get comes from your local National Weather Service office.
Okay. So where can one go to learn more about what you do here, or where to go see weather products, get
Sure.
alerts? How's that work?
The vast majority of the information is available directly on our website at weather.gov. Now that will take you to our parent agency's website. Weather.gov will show you a map of the United States, and you can point and click on that map and get a forecast for wherever you are located in the United States. But if you want to come directly to Melbourne's National Weather Service site, you go to weather.gov/MLB or /Melbourne. That'll take you to our forward-facing website, and you can get the point-and-click forecast, which will show you the 7-day forecast. It'll show you what watch warnings and advisories are currently in effect, and it'll provide you information as it relates to all different types of weather hazards, whether it include thunderstorm hazards, rip current-related hazards, flooding hazards, fire weather, safety hazards, heat and cold hazards. That information is all available on our website at weather.gov/MLB.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Will. We really appreciate your time,
Appreciate
and
it.
thanks everybody for joining us. We'll see you next time on another episode of The Space Between.
Thanks.